Mrs. Deborah Okumu, thank you for coming and welcome to the JSO interview.
Thank you, John.
The Caucus for Women's Leadership. Would you be so kind as to describe it?
The Caucus for Women's Leadership is an organization that brings together women of Kenya of all races, religion, cultural backing, and age to work towards attaining political representation. It was started in 1997 by several women organizations that felt that this area of representation was still lagging behind in our country, especially the women of Kenya. The region had gone ahead in achieving larger numbers than us, and it was about time that we started a process whereby we could attain more numbers of women in parliament.
So affirmative action for women in politics. Now, I would ask you, Mrs. Okumu, why affirmative action in favor of a group that goes through the same education, which isn't marginalized in terms of the provisions laid down for the citizen? Why affirmative action for women? Could you explain that?
Affirmative action was just one of the many frameworks that were put in place. But to go back, actually, the women of Kenya can compete in politics just like men, and they have been doing that, and they had been doing that. But the numbers were not improving. Secondly, there were other issues, obstacles to women's leadership that were way outside politics, like patriarchy, culture, education, and all those things. So we thought that putting women through competitive politics was not going to increase the numbers. Remember, by then, Kenya had signed the documents of CEDAW, of Beijing Platform for Action, saying that at least 1/3 of the leadership at all structures, both elective, appointive, should be women, because then it had been proved that women bring a new thing into leadership. So for those that had got the numbers in the region and in the world, they had gone through the affirmative action path, which means that special laws had to be put in place to help us achieve this quickly.
But then, fast forward,
Yes.
you should be entirely happy now with the new constitution. You have the instrument of your dreams, and therefore, by definition, women in this country ought to be happy. Are they? Are you?
John, we are very happy with the constitution. We are very happy with the structures that the executive has put in place, like the gender commission, like the gender ministry. And I can say that the legal framework for achieving numbers for women is in place. And still yet, there is still this obstacle. After every election, we only have like 6% of the parliament is women. And
Whose fault is that?
that is now why we come in. As we Caucus for Women's Leadership, plus other minded women's organization, we came and sat and said we need a program that is touching each and every aspect of obstacle that was in between the women and elective position, and try to work around them, with them, to see if we can increase the numbers. So 1997, we started a program called Engendering the Political Process, EPPPP. Now that meant that we looked at all the structures that were to be put in place to help the women to get into elective positions. And these structures included the political parties, working with the political parties themselves, working with the judiciary and the ministry, working with the women. In 1997, the story was very different. Even the women to come out and stand was a problem. Working with the women, working with the governance structures, and working with the voters so that we could overcome these obstacles.
But may I ask you, 1997, with respect, is a long time ago. We have elections in a couple of weeks'
Yes,
time.
yes.
And I ask you, Mrs. Okumu,
Yes.
are you happy with the way things are going?
That's why I'm going back to 97. So 97 came and passed, and despite the program, we did not have the numbers. Then 202 came, we still did not have the numbers. Then it's now 007. You remember we improved a bit up to 22.
But could it could it not be argued that you have no desire to have the numbers? Isn't that a choice?
It's a combination of many things, really. It's a combination of many things. For me, I've seen the progress. I've seen the progress first with the women. In 97, we could hardly get women to come out and stand. Because politics, they didn't know politics. The world has been going on with politics without the women. So we had to coach those who were able to, and they came out. So that in the succeeding elections, we saw the numbers increasing. Up to now, we have more numbers than the parties can take. Then secondly, we had to ask the women to join in the political parties, and join in a way that they are useful in the political parties. You see, the older political parties had women as dancers, a dance for the big man. And so we say, get your cards in the political party and get going. And not only as just ordinary member of the political party, but seek positions in the political party. So that what we're saying, by then the political parties were arguing with us, because we are also working with them, that the women don't bring any currency. I mean, they are dead weight. Most political parties, as you know, John, is according to how much you have given the party, then you are given some status. And that also was an obstacle for women, because they don't have the currency. Up to now, they don't have the currency. So they are like baggage. But we increased our fight for this through the Constitution when the referendum was passed. In fact, we were the biggest beneficiaries of this Constitution, because then affirmative action was put. We had then tried, you can see we had tried through elective positions, convince the voters, convince the political parties, convince the women. So the only thing that was left now is to have a legal provision that would give us the quotas that they have to follow the legal provision.
Sorry, that's a wonderful history for us all to follow.
Yeah.
I seem to follow the news somewhat.
Yeah.
These quotas, as given in the Constitution, are not being obeyed even now. So why have you stood back and seen your gains usurped, so to speak?
Us in the NGO world, we have a thing for the Kenyan population. They are not watching what is happening in the Constitution. This document has now become an orphan. And this document in its spirit says that people's participation is key.
So you're describing the Constitution as an orphan.
Yeah, it's an orphan.
That's a good image.
Yeah.
An orphan, parentless.
Thrown this way and thrown, yes.
Would you expand? Why an orphan? It's pretty strong language.
It's an orphan because after the referendum, at the referendum we did the civic education, and many people understood just snipes of things in the Constitution, because you had to tell them what endeared them so they could vote in the referendum. But they did not understand the document in totality, and that also includes the ruling class. So when they really now went into Parliament and they looked at this document and they saw affirmative action, then it was war. I remember when they went to Naivasha to look at this document again, we were on SMS the whole night trying, the women parliamentarians telling us they want to remove affirmative action, because it means they didn't know it was in there. So from there we got alerted that this affirmative action is not sitting well with many people. And including the other day, His Excellency the President told the Maendeleo ya Wanawake women, you cannot expect to be given seats for free. We were alarmed. I mean, this affirmative action is a temporary measure to bring women at par in leadership, not even 50-50. We are only asking for a third. At par, to get that critical mass that would give them confidence in leadership, that also will make a change for women and men in Kenya.
Might you describe why, again in terms of education,
yeah,
countries like Rwanda, Tanzania, where these figures are significantly larger, Is this because they are more cultured? Is this because they are more civilized? What adjective are you going to describe those societies?
Those, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, long adopted a quota system, which is affirmative action. And that is why their numbers have gone up. The whole region, it is only Kenya. And we are embarrassed about this. So when the Attorney General went to the Supreme Court to seek advice, we knew that this thing was coming out, and it came out. Well, they say that it cannot be possible in this election. So we wait for 2017. But the court did not tell us, hey, then how, what are the processes in which we're going to put in place so that in 2015 it is possible, a year that is not even an election year.
Right.